Many years ago, at my first SNAG conference, I found myself walking alongside and chatting with this really interesting woman. She was a hoot. Funny, smart, knowledgeable. She actually also had the most amazing blue eyes. But anyway, we didn't even get each other's names. When we were introduced years later in Yuma, Arizona by Marsha McDonald, I found out that she was Elizabeth Shypertt, co-owner of Velvet Da Vinci Gallery. Elizabeth Shypertt and her business partner Mike Holmes opened Velvet Da Vinci Gallery in San Francisco in 1991. From those very humble origins, Velvet Da Vinci has evolved to become a mecca for collectors, students, makers, and academics. Elizabeth and Mike have an incredibly eclectic curatorial palette, exhibiting high-tech alongside low-tech, old school with cutting-edge, domestic with international. The gallery also champions work from lesser celebrated jewelry and metals hotbeds such as South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Spain, and South America. They are active in engaging artists from other countries and establishing international relationships with galleries abroad, such as the Blue Coat Gallery in Liverpool, UK. Elizabeth has served as a juror on many projects outside of Velvet Da Vinci, including the Philadelphia Museum of Art Craft Show, and along with Mike, the Lark book 500 Pendants and Lockets, which I think some of us are in, and currently serves on the International Advisory Board of the San Francisco Museum of Craft and Design. She loves the field, all of it, and all of us. Please welcome Elizabeth Shypertt.
First off, it's a real honor to be here, and I really appreciate that the Seattle Metals Guild has invited me to speak to you, and also to be on with this roster of speakers. The others are I'm quite honored. So I've been asked to talk about Velvet Da Vinci and my experiences as a we there? My experiences as a gallery owner. Is that too loud? Okay. So just for a little background, Velvet Da Vinci was opened in 1991 by a group of 5 who very quickly, within the first month, became 4, and then 3, and then 2. And since 1997, Mike Holmes and I have been running things. So the images that I've chosen are just a small representation of what we have online. And if you haven't been to our website, please visit velvetdavinci.com. Here's an image of the outside of the current Velvet Da Vinci on Polk Street. So the original group who opened the gallery was made up of all jewelry artists and hobbyists, which is what I was, who were showing their work around town, and we felt that there really wasn't a suitable venue to show art jewelry. Susan Cummins was in Mill Valley, but it's about 20 minutes north of San Francisco and not really on our radar. And also she was showing a much different level of work, and she was showing paintings also, which we had no interest in. And so after a few drunken dinners, we decided that we could do it better. Not really better than Susan Cummins, but better than the other galleries and stores in San Francisco. Until then, we had had studio sales, and we had participated in the Metalsmiths Fair at Fort Mason, which is no longer. It only lasted a couple of years, unfortunately, but it was a really great show when it happened. But no one in the group had any retail experience, although I did have a business background. So I'm asked a lot where the name came from. Since there were originally 5 of us, using one of our names was out, and the name Susan Cummins Gallery was already taken. So we had lists and lists and lists of possibilities for names, most of them rather pretentious, until someone was up late one night and he was watching a Perry Mason rerun, combined 2 of the characters' names, and came up with Velvet Da Vinci. And the first time I heard it, I thought it was just the dumbest thing I had ever heard. But we were moving along. We had to go to City Hall and take out all the paperwork and do the legal documents. And we didn't have another name, so Velvet Da Vinci it was. And we were opened first in Hayes Valley, which is near Civic Center, for those of you who know San Francisco. It was cheap, it was edgy, and it was up and coming. And it was on the wrong side of the earthquake-damaged freeway. But mostly it was cheap. In order to reach us, our customers had to walk past hookers and drug deals, but little by little the neighborhood did improve, and 13 years later we were priced out. As with a lot of these situations, it turned out to be the best thing that could have happened. We ended up in a much better neighborhood with about 3 times the space. And so we've been in this new space for 6 years. Let me show you a couple of images from the interior. Well, those of you who know Mike, these are his legs. And then this is the interior of the gallery. And you can see there's a light well with natural light that comes down, and it's really wonderful for showing work. And we can hang things there or use the whole wall to show things. And there's another image of the light well. So going back to Hayes Valley for just a moment, we did have a choice of venues. There are a number of seedy neighborhoods in San Francisco that we could have gone to. But we decided to open on Hayes Street because there were a number of other first-time retail store owners. And because of the hard work of all the people on the street, Hayes Valley became famous and one of the primo retail spaces in San Francisco now. So we're coming up on 20 years in business, and sorry, it's just I'm kind of short. It's hard to believe it's been so long. And that it all basically started from a few alcohol-fueled dinners. But sitting down to write this talk, I started at the beginning looking at the work we showed 20 years ago and how things have changed and how they haven't. For the first few years, we showed only our own work and the work of our friends who we begged to show with us. And Deb Logier, who I'm sure a lot of you know, was, I think that she's the only artist who has shown with us continuously from the beginning. In the beginning, we showed only local artists, but as our reputation and confidence grew, so did the possibilities. More and more artists came to us wanting representation, and then one day, Mike met some Brits who were showing at the British Crafts Council booth at a big international gift show that happens twice a year in San Francisco. The British Crafts Council used to bring a large group of crafts artists to the show every 6 months. So the people he met invited him to London. While there, he researched jewelry artists and came back with more and more lists. And his new boyfriend, Tom Hill, who is actually still with him and living in San Francisco now. So we organized a show from the names on the lists with much help from Scottish jeweler Katie Hackney. I don't know if you know her work, but she's Scottish, studied with Dorothy Hogg, and now lives in London. These are brooches of hers. And our first international exhibition was born. Mike was in London in the fall of 1996, and by May of 1997, we opened Britain Now. I think it was the first contemporary British art jewelry show in the United States in a gallery. And this show was very significant for us. We produced our first exhibition catalog, and it was a significant milestone for the gallery and kind of the beginning of the road to where we are today. Since then, we've done about one international show a year. This year, it was Lauren Kalman's Dichotomies of Objects, which was an exhibition of work from South Africa. And over the years, we've had many, many international exhibitions, as well as 1- and 2-person shows, and shows focusing on U.S. artists and organizations. Some of the best and more interesting ones are the aforementioned Britain Now, which was in 1997, new work from Barcelona, which was in 2001. Sylvia Walsh is actually German, but has lived in Barcelona for many years. Ramon he's the head of the department at the Massana School in Barcelona. And Judy McCaig, who doesn't sound like she's from Barcelona at all. She's not. She's from Scotland. Also studied with Dorothy Hogg and also teaches at the Massana School. She went to Barcelona for vacation 25 years ago and is still there. We had Rock, Paper, Scissors, which was our 10th anniversary show in 2001, and that was an invitational. And then the 100% proof shows. There was one in 2001 and a second one in 2006. These came out of a trip to London to see the new designers show of new graduates from art schools all over the UK. Both of these shows were curated by Professor Dorothy Hogg, who has now just recently retired, who was from Edinburgh, and were made up of her advanced degree students, both in and out of school. We partnered with Flow Gallery in London and received Craft Council funding to produce the exhibition catalogs that were designed by Pentagram, which is a very famous graphic design firm. Anna Gordon, Grania Morton, who is also Irish, and a lot of people move around in the UK the same way we do here. Marian Anderson. After that, in 2002, we did 50 Years in the Making, which celebrated the 50th anniversary of our local Metal Arts Guild. It was a 2-part exhibition, and we had work that wasn't for sale that was from the founders of the guild. And then we had a group of members' work that was for sale. Most of the founders' work we had to borrow from private collections. Here's a piece of Margaret de Pattis, and actually the Oakland Museum owns a huge amount of her work, and they're doing a show. They're loaning the work to MAD in New York, which is opening, I think, in 2012, and then coming back to Oakland. Abrasha. This is a candlestick that Abrasha did. You probably know his more current work, but this is an older piece. And Mary Rank, who is in her 80s and still alive and kicking in San Francisco. She's a wonderful woman. Also one of the founders of the Guild. Then there was Arctic 5 in 2002, and these were 5 jewelers from north of the Arctic Circle. Peter Rust and Anita Schmid are married, and they're actually Swiss. And here's another serendipitous event. They were on vacation in northern Norway in the middle of nowhere, and their car broke down. And 35 years later, they're still there. So Inger Blix-Kavamen, who lives about 5 miles from the Russian border at the very top of Norway, and we show her work regularly. But it's interesting, a lot of her work to me looks it almost could be African, and she lives at the other end of the earth from Africa. So then we had the chess show, which was also invitational, and we produced a catalog for it. It was also the show that we had up during the San Francisco SNAG conference in 2003, and Velvet Da Vinci hosted the SNAG conference, and I have to commend the Seattle Metal Arts Guild for taking this event on a second time because, well, first, I was at the first SNAG conference here in Seattle, and it was fabulous. I mean, it was the best until San Francisco, of course. And now to take it on again, it's an amazing amount of stamina, and I really commend you. I would never do it again. So this show traveled to the Venel Gallery in Scotland, to the Ruth and Crafts Centre in Wales, to the Craft Council Gallery at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, the John Michael Kohler Arts Centre in Sheboygan, Thomas Mann had it at his gallery in New Orleans, and to the Fuller Craft Museum in Boston. Here's a piece from Andy Cooperman, his bishop. And this is the King and Queen from an entire set that Lucy Casson did. She is from London. And the Crafts Council, the British Crafts Council, bought her entire set for their permanent collection. There were only 3 entire sets. One was Lucy's, one was Abrasha's, and one was Marjorie Schick's. But I think that the show that most defines who Velvet Da Vinci is was the anti-war medal show that we put up in 2003 and then again in 2005. We put out a call for entries when Bush declared the war was over. I'll put up one of the medals. And do you remember Mission Accomplished when he was on the aircraft carrier? And this show was specifically not juried. We strongly felt that if anybody wanted to make a medal to protest the war, that we would show it. There were about 150 entries from 16 countries, and it was incredibly well attended. There were people would come in to the gallery and look around and read all of the captions, read all of the information that we had. It was an amazing body of work. We did have some protests. There were a few people and a few phone calls who thought that this was just not the thing that we should be doing. But honestly, I live in San Francisco, and I don't think I know a single Republican. So, we did travel the show. We did try to travel the show, but we couldn't find any other venues in the States. There were a number of universities and some galleries. Actually, the galleries weren't even interested at the time. But the universities and art centers would be very interested, and then at the end back out because they had somebody on their board or one of their professors who would take offense with it. So we thought it was just dead in the water. But we did the first Collect in London. I don't know if you all know what Collect is. It's kind of like a sofa, but in London. And that was in January of 2004. And we took a small selection of the pieces from the anti-war show to present during the Collect show. And Barbara Cartledge, who is the founder of Electrum Gallery in London and quite an old commie herself, decided that she really wanted to present the entire show. So it went to Electrum. We came back. We shipped off the rest of the pieces. It went to Electrum. Then because of that connection, we found 2 venues in Norway, and then it went to the FAD exhibition space in Barcelona, which is this fabulous underground stone thing. It's fabulous. And at each venue, there were local artists that were added. So when the show came back to San Francisco and the war was still going on, we decided to put it up again, and that was in 2005. And eventually it did find another venue in the States. Tom Mann had it in New Orleans. But the British Museum, the Victoria and Albert Museum, the Imperial War Museum, all in London, bought pieces from the show for their permanent collections. And these are just some of the this was just amazing work. Small selection of the pieces. This was a great piece, 3 Maimed Bettys. And this is the piece, Operation Enduring Fiefdom, that the British Museum bought for their collection. It was by William Clark. So the last exhibition in our old space took 2 years to put together, and it was titled Joyas Joyas. It was the first show about new developments in Latin American jewelry, and I feel it was really groundbreaking since it was from an area of the world that until then had been almost completely overlooked in terms of jewelry. This is Daniela Schwartz from Buenos Aires, Jimena Bello from Colombia, and Jorge Castañón is from Buenos Aires, and he's kind of the Ramon Puig of Latin America. It seems that most Latin Americans, if they can study abroad, go to Barcelona to study with Ramon, and if they can't, they go to Buenos Aires to study with Jorge. So then, after that, we moved to our current location and opened with what would be the first in a series of exhibitions based on the Lark Books 500 series. Actually, the first of the series was 1,000 Rings. Apparently, Bob Ebbendorf, who curated the 1,000 Rings book, couldn't decide on 500. So they changed the format for him. No such luck for the rest of us. Mike and I did the Pendants and Lockets book, and we got the 7,000 entries down to 900 that we really, really liked, and we were told, no way, we had to cut another 400. So I suppose that tells you who really should be up here, who's the influential one in this in our group. It should be Ebbendorf up here, not me. So then we had the 200 Rings. And there were about 175 artists from the book, which I will never do again. It was one of our best-selling shows ever, though, and it toured the U.S. and was part of the Cleveland Snag Conference. So this is Belinda Hager from New Zealand, and this is it's the ring that I'm wearing. It's the diamonds represent the Southern Cross, and it's in niobium. Ida Force, who is from Sweden. Now, you'd think I would have put up only names I could pronounce, but he's from Slovakia. And Maria Phillips. I had to stick in some Seattle people. It was only right. After that, we produced shows based on the 500 Brooches book. I'll just go through these quickly. because most of them you've already seen. This is actually a micro-mosaic, an Italian micro-mosaic that she made the frame for. It's a beautiful piece. Susan Cross from Edinburgh, and Svenja John from Germany. Then we did the necklace book. I'm sure a lot of these people you already recognize, but these are they're wonderful pieces, wonderful books. Rebecca Hannon, who now lives in Canada, for those of you who don't know that, where it's really cold. Tiana Roebuck, who's also Canadian. Silke Trekkel. And the earring book, Hannah Lamb from Scotland, Natasha from New York, Beata Eisman from Germany. These are pieces from, this is our current show. It's the plastic show from the plastic objects. And nice necklace. And Josephine Winter, who is Danish. So these books are a wonderful snapshot of what's happening in art jewelry today, and the shows that have been based on the books have been really terrific, both because of the work in them and financially. Diverse, interesting, international. We toured a number of exhibitions that we organized, but sadly had to stop doing this because there were damages from the other venues, and ultimately we were the ones responsible, and it just proved to be too costly. And something about doing international shows, when we first started doing them, it was much more difficult. Everything had to go by mail or costly phone calls, and now about 99% of it is done over the internet, and it's just so much easier. It's hard to believe how quickly that's happened. So in 2008, we did a show called New West Coast Design, which was a group of exhibitions held at different venues throughout San Francisco at the same time, or basically at the same time, focusing on the specific developments of craft and the design fields. The Velvet Da Vinci exhibition showed some of the most exciting new designs in jewelry and metalwork. These shows were based on the California design exhibitions from the Pasadena Museum that happened from the 50s to the 70s. There were exhibitions around town happening at the same time as ours, the Contemporary Objects at the Museum of Craft and Design, Book Arts at Center for the Book, Fiber at Bouchon Gallery, Art Quilts in San Rafael, which I don't think anybody saw because it wasn't in San Francisco, and Craft in Our Future at the California College of the Arts. And we also produced a catalog for this, for New West Coast Design from our own funds. Let me show you a few more. This is a piece by Susan Danis. This basket hung from the ceiling, and it was probably about 2 feet tall, full of glass jewels. And it was really fun. It weighed a ton, but it was a really fun piece. Eric Kim Lilo, who is from San Francisco. So, speaking a little about catalogs for just a minute. Over the years, we've produced a number of catalogs for different exhibitions. For the ones we've produced ourselves, we've never really been able to sell enough to cover the costs. We've received funding from the British Crafts Council for the chess catalog, from the Mondrian Foundation for a Dutch show that we organized, and from the Scottish Crafts Council for the 100% proof catalogs. Sometimes getting the funding is more work than actually producing the catalog, but it's wonderful to have a permanent record of any exhibition. One of the other problems we've encountered trying to source funding from the U.S. is that U.S. nonprofits will generally only give money to other nonprofits or educational facilities. So producing catalogs is a difficult thing. Last year we did a show based on the 500 Enameled Objects book and timed it to coincide with the Enamelist Society Conference 2009, which was called Surfacing, and took place in Oakland. Many of the attendees to the conference had pieces in the show, and this show was kind of like Christmas in August. We sold an enormous amount of work from it. From jewelry to wall pieces, it was really, really a wonderful show. This is a tin can that she enameled. Earlier this year, we had two big group shows that were both very successful. The first was New Zealand Jewelry, Ellen Preston. This was a small brooch that was just gorgeous. And Jason Hall. And then we also, this year, had a show called Chaste and Reposé, which was curated by Nancy Megan Corwin, and had a number of your guild members in it. Keith Lewis. And here's a piece by Megan. And Candace Beardsley. Had to plug Seattle, you know. Occasionally, we do shows that have nothing to do with jewelry. Nikki Ulehala is a young jeweler and marionette maker. And her father is Czech. He's from Czechoslovakia, so she still has family there and has spent time there and learned how to make marionettes, how to carve them in the Czech Republic. And in 2007, we showed her hand-carved marionettes. And she and her friends put together two performances, one at the opening and one at the end, they were really fun. This is her chicken. And this is George. She has a fixation with George Washington. So now, staying on the subject of sculpture for a moment, Tom Hill is our very best seller. And considering we have about 90% jewelry in the gallery and 10% sculpture, this number is really very telling. Tom's work is fabulous. This is his bound wire bird. The previous ones were carved wooden birds. And it's appealing, but considering that sculpture makes up such a small percentage of what we sell, a small percentage of the whole, it really is quite revealing that we sell so much of it. This is a steel ram that is life-size. So most of the exhibitions we curate ourselves, but sometimes we take curated ones and have had little or no say in the work that's included. If a show looks good and it looks interesting and it's something that we haven't done before, and depending on the schedule of everything else that's in the works, we'll take a curated show. Unfortunately, the work can look great in the images, but when it arrives, it's less than stellar. We have had shows with work that was odd, poorly made, way too conceptual, or simply overpriced. However, sometimes we know that a body of work won't necessarily sell from an exhibition, but is innovative and exciting and different, and hopefully it will bring people in the door who may not buy anything from the show, but they may buy something from one of our regular artists. But having shows that don't sell is a problem because they're expensive to put up, and this is a business, hopefully a for-profit business, though not always, and we must make money to keep the doors open. Over the years, we've been faced with having to pay the bills and wanting to show interesting work, and it's a very difficult balance. And although the exhibitions are a big part of what we do, our regular stable of artists make up the backbone of the gallery. We regularly show the work of about 80 to 100 artists. Around a third are from the San Francisco area, a third from the rest of the states, and a third from the rest of the world, more or less. The people we show span a wide variety of styles, materials, and prices. We have lots of different ways with dealing with artists. We have a few people who show a body of work with us, and after a few months ask for it back, and then we don't show their work again for a couple of years, or sometimes never again. We have others who we show continually, some with only production work, some with only one of a kind, and some with a mixture of both. There are so many really good jewelry artists out there working today that it's very difficult to decide who to show. We rarely take on new artists these days. There's a space constraint. And we want to be able to show the work that we have, to show it well, and to give each artist the space that they deserve. Doing the large group exhibitions gives us the opportunity to show artists that we'd like to have in the gallery regularly but don't have the room for. It also introduces our customers to new artists. We show emerging artists, seasoned artists, and just about everything in between, everyone in between, with a price range that reflects this scope. We're proud to have been able to showcase a number of artists just out of school. Rebecca Strelick, Jillian Moore, Stacy Lee Weber, Seth Papik are just a few examples of these. Our artist showcases are a small group of work from one artist that usually happen during a larger group exhibition. They generally are younger, newer artists, but not always. Right now, we have up a Svenja John artist showcase with about 25 pieces of her work that's up during the plastic show. So I want to show you just a few images of some of the artists that we show regularly. Greg Wilbur, who only does larger pieces and sculpture. He doesn't do any jewelry. Lynn Christensen, who does a million different things, has worked with runway, with designers to do runway model jewelry. She actually did a chainmail bikini for a model in LA. Belina Strand, who's originally from Denmark, lives in San Francisco now. Sandra Enterline, who I'm sure you all know. Jane Adam, who is from London and works almost exclusively in anodized aluminum. Julia Turner, who is also local. She's from Madison, Wisconsin, actually, but she's lived in San Francisco many years now, and does both one-of-a-kind and limited edition pieces. Vina Rust from here. Sebastian Bucher, who is German, studied in England, and sends us groupings every couple of years. This latest group comes from his travels in Southeast Asia last year, when he collected things from the beach and from stalls and whatever, and went home and made lots of jewelry from it. Joanna Goldberg from North Carolina. Mike and Micah. Mike and Micah are industrial designers, and they've done some really big projects. They've done airport seating chairs. They did the case for the Xbox, and every once in a while they do some jewelry or they do some mobiles for us. They have little projects because they don't like to always work big. And what the Stolen Jewels series is, they took pictures of famous jewels like the Hope Diamond, pixelated it, and then took leather, cut out the shape of the diamond or the shape of the jewel, made little squares in the leather, and then hand painted each square so that if you're up close, it looks like a pixelated piece of leather. If you back off, it looks like a jewel. So they're really fun pieces and incredibly labor intensive. Timothy Unlimited. This is Timothy Carson from London. Sayumi Yokouchi, who is from Tokyo originally, went to CCAC in Berkeley, and is now living in New York. Donna D'Aquino. This picture is to show her bracelets, not to show the woman, but I thought it was fun. This was a spread from Italian Vogue, and when Donna showed this to her parents in the magazine, she put a Post-it note over the Brazilian. And Kei Sekamachi, who is a weaver and very well-known woman in her 80s who lives in Berkeley. She was married to Bob Stockdale for many years until he died, and about 3 or 4 years ago she decided she wanted to start making jewelry. She had lots of things she had collected, and so she made a collection of jewelry, and we've been selling it ever since. It's really beautiful, wonderful pieces. But about a year ago, she came to us with a proposal to do a show with Kif Slemons, incorporating stones and shells and pieces of coral and detritus that they had found on the beach in Puako on the Big Island, where Kay has been going for years and Kif has gone a number of times. So they put together this show, and we had it in the gallery last year. It was just phenomenal. It was really wonderful work. So I'd like to talk about the internet for a moment and its relation to our field, and specifically to galleries in our field. I guess the big question that I really don't know the answer to is whether galleries are still viable for selling art jewelry, or maybe not viable, but if they're still the best venue for selling art jewelry, or if modern developments such as the internet have made them or are making them obsolete. The internet is making it easier and easier to see good work, contact artists directly, and buy from them directly. For years, when asked if we were ever going to sell online, I've argued that people need to touch and try on jewelry before making a decision about buying it. And to some extent, I still think this is true. But as internet buying becomes more and more the norm, people seem to be more willing to take chances and order online. The Artful Home is a very good example of this. But there is the education factor that's harder to do without a face-to-face encounter. We often have people come in the gallery for the first time who just don't understand what we're doing. Recently, a young man came into Velvet Da Vinci and was looking at a piece of wall sculpture by Susie Ganch, one of our jewelers. And when I told him the price was $24,000, he looked at me aghast. And he said that if he were going to spend $24,000 on a piece of art, he would buy a Picasso print. So I talked to him for probably, 15 or 20 minutes, and I argued the merits of buying craft in today's market, buying one of a kind instead of a print, buying because you love something and not worrying about whether the value would increase or not, etc., etc. He didn't buy the piece, but at least I had a chance to give my say and to make my case. And over the years, I've had many, many similar encounters that often resulted not only in a sale at the time, but with a customer who trusts me and little by little learns more, understands more, and buys more. I realize that this can happen on the internet too, but somehow it just doesn't seem as likely. There are collectors, and we love our collectors. It's really exciting to have someone plop down thousands of dollars in one fell swoop and buy a number of interesting and exciting pieces. Unfortunately, this doesn't happen every day, and the other problem with this is that the collectors are all my age or older, and I'm no spring chicken. So, talking a little more about the nitty-gritty of gallery operations. Mike and I do most of the work involved in running the gallery. We both work on the sales floor, and without getting into too much detail, he's in charge of the installation of the work, and I do all the paperwork. We have 2 part-time staff who both work on the floor, and one of whom does our public relations. She keeps the resumes up to date, and she does all of the really mundane things that I hate doing, like filing. We started the business on a shoestring, and we still pretty much run it on a shoestring. We are consignment only, and we never ask for exclusivity from our artists. Trust is a huge part of this business. We wouldn't be in business if we had to buy all the work that we show, and I recognize just how much of a leap of faith it is for an artist to send us work on consignment, sometimes from halfway around the world. Partly due to this, we feel that asking for exclusivity is simply unfair to the artists. We have to make a living. We have to keep the doors open, but the artist has to make a living too, and we feel that exclusive contracts are just too limiting to the artists. And specifically, how do we choose the work? As I said before, these days we rarely take on new people. When we do, we look at a number of factors. First off, if the work is well made. Once a piece is sold and out the door and in a happy home, I never want to see it again. Things break. It does happen occasionally, but I try really hard to make sure that anything that we sell is really well made. If it's different from other work that we show, we don't want to have artists be in competition with each other in the gallery. And if we feel that we can sell it, a lot of it has to do with a gut feeling. We feel it's either going to work or it's not going to work. It also depends on the artist. Mike and I made a pact years ago, and we have pretty much stuck to it, that if one of us has a problem with an artist, we don't show that artist, no matter how fabulous the work is. We can choose our we can't choose our customers, but we can choose our artists. So, getting back to whether we've outstayed our welcome as a gallery, maybe the art jewelry gallery business is soon to be a thing of the past. In the UK and Northern Europe, galleries are still seem to be thriving, and jewelry artists that are coming out of school are still able to make a decent living. To be fair, a few new galleries have opened here in the States in the past few years. There's Lulo in Healdsburg, Karen Gilbert's gallery, and Shibumi in Berkeley, which is April Higashi's gallery, just to name two. But is it a sustainable business? I don't have the answer to that, and I guess only time will tell. So why am I in this business? I've pretty much told you my take on things. What I haven't talked about is why I do this. Of course, part of it is for the money. It's a business. At best, it's an absolutely great way to make a living. At worst, it's absolutely hair-raising. However, the part of the business that I continue to love and always will is the relationships that I have built up over the years with clients and with artists, and the incredible work that I have been privileged to see and show and touch. Every time the UPS truck pulls up and delivers a package of work, I feel like it's Christmas. I can think of few merchants who have this experience. For most, it's just a chore. For me, it's a delight. And it's an element that keeps this business forever interesting. Thank you. Okay. Sorry?
You can take questions.
Okay. Any questions?
Elizabeth?
Yes.
What moved you personally? Aesthetically, what moved you? When you look at something, what do you
What moves me personally? If I want to put it on, if I want to take it home, if I want to wear it. I know that, Mike and I are in a constant battle about things that, I think that jewelry should be worn. And he is much more on the esoteric side of it. And so, we strike a balance. But for me, it's if it's beautiful, or if it's interesting, or if it's fun, and if I can wear it.
How is the plastic show faring?
Sales are good. They're not great. No, sales are not great. It's been a very slow couple of years. It's really times are tough. We'll have a good month, and then we'll have a bad month, and we're hanging in there. We'll be fine. We've done this for 20 years. It's happened before. After 9/11, we had about 2 really bad years too, and slowly things are coming back, and I think they're coming back now too. San Francisco wasn't hit as hard as a lot of other places, but it's we're all. I don't know of anybody who's not having some sort of economic setback. Or, am I wrong about this? Yeah. But the work is fantastic. It's fun. It's colorful. It's exciting. If you can get down to San Francisco to see it, you should.
Well, you're wearing a piece, right?
I am wearing a piece. This is my good friend, Sarah King from London. Yeah.
What can be done to? As Don Friedlich says, all the collectors are now walking with canes. If you're you're in great shape. If you're not, you're kind of screwed. What can be done, and what is being done to bring up the next generation of collectors?
Well, there is the Art Jewelry Forum that is, Mike's now on the board, and Susan Cummins has taken over since she closed her gallery. She's taken over as president again, and is just doing a rip-roaring job. She's doing a fantastic job. And they're trying to get schools involved, curators, students. Oh, actually, I'm not sure about students, but they're trying to get, the membership has doubled in the last year or so. And they're trying to reach out to the community. Sally, you're out here. Are they trying to get students too or not? No. Okay.
What the forum is doing is this year has a new category called the Arts Professional. The Arts Professional category is designed for university professors, full-time makers, and if one wanted to pay the $100 membership fee and consider themselves a bona fide arts professional, then they could join. Student work, though, per se, is every year the Art Jewelry Forum, and it's expanding this. We'll have an online permanent student gallery of work from students as they graduate, and then also next year we'll have a publishing environment whereby student work that is commentary will be published. So thesis and things like that by master's students will be available online and reposited there forever, basically. So the answer is yes.
Okay, and I just realized too that having students in the Art Jewelry Forum does not necessarily mean that we're bringing up another group of collectors. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's being done.
Well, what the forum is doing to increase the collector base is to internationalize the membership, because there are a number of viable galleries around the world, but what there aren't, what there isn't, is visibility of their collectors to work in the States. And we've grown our membership to include a number of members from international places, from the international markets. But I think more importantly, we've launched a blog. We're just trying to enliven the debate so that we gain more visibility and grow more collectors.
So you need a perfect storm of money, passion, and youth. It seems to be a collector.
And I don't think you necessarily need money as. I mean, we have a lot of customers who started shopping with us almost 20 years ago who were neighborhood kids, 20s, in their 20s. And they started buying, I think of one in particular who was buying for his girlfriend at the time, and now they are married and they have a child, and he comes in 3 times a year. He comes in for her birthday, he comes in for Christmas, and he comes in for their anniversary. And he has bought her almost everybody in the gallery, a piece from almost everybody. But he started by buying, $35 earrings, and now he spends $1,000 a pop. And, there are less expensive pieces, and he is definitely a collector and does not see himself that way. And his wife is a collector. She wears all of this work. And I think I don't think you necessarily have to have a lot of money to be a collector. You just have to have an eye and look for deals. Look for young people who are just coming out of school who haven't who maybe even undervalue their work. Start collecting them. But how do you get this across to people that it's an interesting thing to do? I suppose it's like any art form. I don't know. I don't know how to do it.
How do you sell the Susie Gack sculpture?
Well, we didn't. But but we sell her brooches.
But I think that is a question.
It is a question, and sometimes. We send out emails, we make phone calls more than anything to the collectors, but these are already established collectors. How do you find the people who would spend that kind of money on craft, who think nothing of spending $50,000 on a painting, but won't come in and spend, I don't know. Something we should all strive for, I guess.
I'm just curious, I don't think we can see if my hand's up on that. How the price of metals, because they're going up so rapidly. If that, on the one hand, it might make the cost for the artists go up, but on the other hand, does it also incite interest in buying, works made from something that's considered more and more precious now? That might, have the effect of...
It's been really difficult because we have some sample rings that people will come in and see to use as wedding rings, and the price of gold has been going up so quickly that we haven't been able to keep pace with it necessarily, or we forget or whatever. And so someone will come in and we always say it's going to be more expensive because it's a custom ring, and we'll get a price for you. And there have been times when the price has been almost double, and the ring didn't happen. It was underpriced to begin with, and we just hadn't changed the price, or the artist hadn't changed the price in too long. So if they were to come in and buy that ring off the shelf, it would still be that lower price. But if they want to have a new ring made, since the price of gold has gone up so much, people getting married and buying wedding rings will pay the price that they can. They have a budget, and they'll find a ring within their budget. One thing it has done is I wear a Wesley Glebe titanium ring, and it's made his rings much more affordable because the price of titanium has not gone up. Did I answer your question?
I'm just curious if people, you said they'd rather buy a Picasso print than something made of metal, but because there's this perceived, it's all in the perception, and now gold is in the news, making if people are suddenly, interested in buying it more, thinking it has greater value than...
I haven't seen that.
Okay.
And in our field, it's more, are people going to buy Picasso prints or are they going to buy craft? And generally, the craft that we sell hasn't gone up in price because of the metal price.
Oh, that's sad. I mean, in the 70s, I think there was interest in buying art made of metal because, there was a sense of value in the object, intrinsic value.
Huh. I don't know how to answer that. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.